The docking ring of Karseth Trade Station never slept. Cargo skiffs drifted in slow, obedient arcs beyond the viewport, their navigation lights blinking like patient stars. Inside, the ring hummed with layered gravity fields calibrated for species that preferred mass over balance. Humans endured it quietly. They always did. Mara Ilyanova stood near Dock 17, tablet braced against her forearm, eyes tracking a flicker in the station's stress readouts. The gravitic compensator under the deck plating was lagging by a fraction of a percent, nothing dramatic, but enough to matter if a heavy freighter latched on at the wrong moment. She knelt, fingers steady as she pulled back the access panel. The gravity pressed into her joints like a familiar hand. Higher than Earth's standard. Not hostile. Just inconvenient. Diagnostics are clean, she murmured mostly to herself. Step away from the panel. The voice was harsh, grated through a Krellin throat not built for patience. Mara straightened slowly and turned. Varkesh Thun filled the corridor like a slab of armor given legs. His species was tall even by Concord standards, wide-shouldered, plated along the forearms with natural ridges that flexed when he moved. The insignia of dock enforcement gleamed on his chest harness. She didn't sigh. Didn't roll her eyes. She simply stood. Officer, she said. This compensator is running hot. I'm authorized to. Human, Varkesh interrupted, mandibles tightening. You are authorized to answer when spoken to. A few nearby workers paused. Not close enough to intervene. Close enough to watch. Mara held his gaze. I am spoken to. And I'm answering. That earned her a step forward. The deck creaked faintly under his weight. You access restricted systems without clearance, Varkesh said. Again. She lifted her tablet, angling the display. Engineering override. Logged 3 minutes ago. You can verify it. He didn't look. Instead, his eyes traced her, from the scuffed boots to the collar of her jacket, marked with the dull blue patch of human contract labor. No rank. No ornamentation. Just function. Your kind always hides behind tools, he said. Machines. Words. Permissions. Mara felt the tension ripple outward. She could sense the humans nearby holding still, hoping compliance would end it quickly. Officer, she said evenly, if the compensator fails during docking, you'll lose 3 bays and a pressurized corridor. I suggest. His hand closed on her collar. The motion was casual. Almost bored. Fingers hooking into the fabric just below her throat, lifting enough to break contact between her boots and the deck. Gasps flared from the onlookers. Varkesh smiled. Mara's tablet slipped from her grasp and clattered to the floor. She didn't flail. Didn't claw at his arm. Her weight settled fully into his grip, dense and unyielding. His smile faltered. The Krellin arm wasn't built for leverage at that angle, especially not under station gravity. Tendons screamed as his shoulder joint protested the sudden, uncompromising load. Put me down, Mara said quietly. The words weren't a threat. They were precise. Varkesh snarled and lifted harder, mandibles flaring in humiliation. The joint crossed its tolerance threshold. The sound was wrong, wet, sharp, final. His arm folded at the elbow in a direction it was never meant to go. Bone fractured through plating. The force of the failure twisted his balance, sending his bulk crashing sideways into a cargo stanchion. Mara landed on her feet. Silence slammed into the corridor, broken only by Varkesh's strangled cry and the shrill wail of medical alarms kicking in automatically. She stepped back once, hands visible, breathing controlled. Her pulse thudded, but her face remained composed. Medical assistance required, she said to the open corridor. Officer Thun is injured. Security drones descended within seconds, blue lights strobing. Medtechs followed, their expressions shifting from confusion to alarm as they took in the angle of Varkesh's arm. What happened? One demanded. He attempted physical restraint, Mara replied. I warned him. Varkesh was barely conscious, mandibles trembling as shock took hold. His eyes found her, wide with disbelief rather than pain. She didn't move, he rasped. The medtechs didn't answer him. They worked fast, stabilizing the shattered limb, injecting analgesics calibrated far below what the damage required. Station security finally turned their attention to Mara. Hands behind your back, an officer said. She complied without hesitation. As the restraints clicked into place, murmurs spread through the crowd. Not outrage. Not fear. Calculation. Humans had always been background noise on Karseth. Useful. Ignored. Endured. What the witnesses had just seen didn't fit the pattern. Mara was escorted away as Varkesh was lifted onto a grav stretcher, his arm immobilized, his authority bleeding out with every second. Behind them, Doc 17's compensator spiked, then steadied itself, quietly preventing the failure no one would now credit her for. By the time the corridor cleared, the incident report was already transmitting beyond the station, flagged for Concord review. Misjudgment, once made, could not be taken back. The medical wing of Karseth was built for repair, not mercy. Its white corridors curved gently to accommodate species that preferred circular spaces, and its gravity fluctuated subtly to suit different anatomies. None of it helped Varkesh Thun. He lay suspended in a gel cradle, chest rising in shallow increments, as machines did the work his body no longer could. His right arm was gone, not severed, but rendered useless, bound in rigid braces that kept shattered joints from collapsing inward. Tubes threaded into his feeding ports, delivering nutrient slurry in slow, humiliating pulses. The lead surgeon studied the scans again, mandibles twitching with unease. The damage is irreversible, she said. Your joint lattice failed catastrophically. Reconstruction would require full limb replacement, and your physiology will reject it. Varkesh stared at the ceiling. I was enforcing order. You exceeded protocol, the surgeon replied flatly. And gravity does not care about protocol. Across the station, in a smaller room with fewer curves, Mara Ilyanova sat at a metal table bolted to the deck. The gravity was slightly lower here, adjusted, she suspected, to make interrogation easier on the body. It didn't. A Concord adjudicator activated the recorder. Its lens glowed amber. State your name and occupation. Mara Ilyanova. Structural engineer. Emergency systems. You are charged with assault against a dock enforcement officer of the Galactic Concord. Do you understand the severity of this allegation? I understand the words, Mara said. Not the framing. The adjudicator's frills stiffened. Explain. He initiated physical contact, Mara replied. I requested de-escalation. He ignored it. You did not strike him. No. You did not attempt to flee. No. Yet he is permanently disabled. Mara folded her hands. Officer Thun misjudged the load-bearing limits of his own body. The adjudicator paused, clearly displeased. You are being imprecise. Then allow me to be precise, Mara said. He lifted my full mass one-handed under elevated gravity. That was his decision. Silence settled, heavy as pressure. In a larger chamber above the docking ring, the Concord Review Council convened. Representatives from 12 species projected into the space, their forms hovering in translucent layers. Human delegates sat physically present at the far end of the table, 3 of them, unadorned, hands folded, faces unreadable. The injured party claims provocation, said a Threlian Justice Caste member. He states the human was non-compliant. She was performing authorized maintenance, replied a human delegate. We submitted the logs. A tool error could fabricate those permissions, another counselor said. Then examine the raw timestamps, the human answered. They predate the encounter, the room murmured. Bias shifted, but did not vanish. Medical footage played next. Varkesh's arm failing in slow, unforgiving detail. The council watched in silence. That level of damage suggests enhanced strength, someone observed. The human delegate shook his head once. No enhancement. Baseline. A ripple passed through the projections. Impossible, a Krellin representative snapped. Humans are adapted for low gravity. Earth's standard gravity is higher than most Concord hubs, the delegate replied calmly. And many humans grow up above that. The council recessed briefly. When they returned, the adjudicator spoke again. We require verification. The demonstration took place in a controlled bay, far from public view. A calibrated mass, equivalent to a fully armored Krellin officer, was suspended in a gravity field matched to Dock 17 at the time of the incident. A human dockworker stepped forward. Middle-aged. Unremarkable. Lift only, the adjudicator instructed. No acceleration. The worker nodded, wrapped both hands around the harness, and raised the mass smoothly until it cleared the deck. No strain. No dramatics. Several counselors adjusted their projections, data streaming rapidly. Again, one said. The worker complied. The silence that followed was different. Less dismissive. More cautious. Back in the medical wing, Varkesh awoke fully for the first time since the injury. Awareness arrived with pain and something worse, absence. He tried to flex his arm. Nothing answered. A monitor chimed softly as nutrient flow adjusted. What is this? He croaked. You are receiving sustenance intravenously, the surgeon said. Your mandibular alignment was compromised during the fall. Varkesh's mandibles trembled. Temporarily. The surgeon met his gaze. No. His breath hitched, shallow and sharp. The human was not injured, she said. The truth landed harder than the fall. In the detention wing, Mara was released from restraints but not from scrutiny. A human liaison brought her water. She accepted it with a nod. They're recalculating, he said quietly. About time, she replied. You could have fought back. I didn't need to. The liaison studied her. That restraint may save us. Across the station, policies began shifting without announcement. Dock enforcement issued new engagement guidelines. Physical contact clauses were amended. Training simulations were updated to include human mass differentials. None of it was public yet. The Concord Council reconvened for final deliberation. The adjudicator's voice carried less certainty now. The evidence supports the claim that the injury resulted from Officer Thun's actions, they said. However, the implications of human physical capability cannot be ignored. What implications? The human delegate asked. That your species represents an unclassified risk. Mara's image appeared on the chamber display, drawn from interrogation footage. Calm. Still. Risk, the delegate echoed. Is intent multiplied by capability? You have seen capability. Examine intent. The council fell quiet. Varkesh lay awake as the station lights dimmed to cycle night. The feeding tube pulsed softly, a metronome of dependency. Somewhere beyond the walls, humans walked the corridors as they always had, heads down, voices low. He had believed that meant submission. Now he understood it meant control. And control, once revealed, could never be unseen. The Concord chamber reconvened under tighter security. No announcements were made, yet the air itself felt recalibrated. Observers filled the outer galleries, envoys, analysts, quiet recorders who understood that history rarely arrived with spectacle. It arrived with corrections. Mara Ilyanova stood at the center dais, hands resting loosely at her sides. No restraints. No guards within arm's reach. The absence was deliberate. The adjudicator inclined their head. You may speak. Mara didn't rush. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes that no longer dismissed her presence. I grew up in a city that rotated at 1.2 standard gravity, she said. We trained for falls before we learned to read. Not because we were violent, but because mistakes were unforgiving. A Threlian counselor shifted. You are implying environmental conditioning. I'm stating it, Mara replied. Humans adapt early. Bones thicken. Muscles tighten. Balance becomes instinct. None of this is exceptional to us. Yet you did not disclose this during integration. another voice said. We weren't asked, she answered. And we didn't think it mattered. A murmur followed, unease, not outrage. The human delegate rose. We submitted full physiological data during first contact. It was categorized as non-threatening. Because humans demonstrated no aggressive incidents, the adjudicator said. That wasn't an absence of capability, the delegate replied. It was restraint. Medical footage of Varkesh Thulin appeared, not from the injury, but from recovery. He lay propped upright, feeding tube secured, eyes hollow. His testimony had been recorded hours earlier. I believe dominance maintained order, Varkesh said on screen, voice strained. When the human did not resist, I assumed compliance. I increased force. His mandibles quivered. I was wrong. The chamber stayed silent. No one interrupted. I misjudged mass. I misjudged balance. I misjudged intent, he continued. She warned me. The image froze. A Krellin representative spoke, quieter than expected. Officer Thun no longer holds authority. That is not the question before us, the adjudicator replied. The question is classification. A data lattice expanded above the dais, projections of strength curves, injury thresholds, gravity tolerances. Humans no longer appeared as flat lines at the bottom. They formed a plateau, wide, controlled, deliberately capped. If humans are physically dominant, said a counselor, they must be restricted. By what metric? The human delegate asked. Incidents per capita? Weaponization? Casualty ratios? No answer came. Mara spoke again. We avoid contact because we know what happens when force replaces judgment. Our history is not clean. That's why our rules are strict. Rules imposed by whom? The adjudicator asked. By ourselves, she said. The council recessed one final time. When they returned, the verdict was delivered without ceremony. All charges against Mara Ilyanova are dismissed, the adjudicator announced. The injury sustained by Officer Thun is ruled self-inflicted through procedural violation. A pause. Then the harder part. Humanity will not be reclassified as a dominant species. Several projections flickered in surprise. However, the adjudicator continued, dock enforcement protocols across Concord stations will be amended. Physical coercion against humans is prohibited. Engagement standards will be revised to reflect mass and strength variance. The human delegation did not smile. Mara exhaled, slow and controlled. The days that followed were quieter. Not peaceful, just careful. On Karseth, officers kept their distance. Orders were issued with words instead of hands. Humans noticed first, then everyone else. Mara returned to Dock 17. The compensator purred within acceptable margins. A junior tech nodded respectfully as she passed. Weeks later, she crossed the medical wing on an unrelated inspection. The doors slid open, revealing Varkesh Thun seated beside a viewport, nutrient line coiled neatly against his harness. He saw her. For a moment, he stiffened, reflex without authority. Then his shoulders sagged. You were right, he said hoarsely. It did end badly. Mara stopped a respectful distance away. I didn't want it to. He looked at the stars beyond the glass. Your people walk softly. We choose to, she replied. Silence settled, not hostile, not forgiving. Just real. Mara continued down the corridor, boots steady against the deck. Around her, the station moved on, recalibrated in small, meaningful ways. Humanity didn't celebrate. There were no declarations, no warnings etched into law. Only a subtle shift in posture across the stars. They had been seen. And that was enough.